Standing at the edge of the Duluth Ship Canal, you feel it before you see it, a deep, resonant horn blast that seems to shake the air itself. Then, like a slow-moving wall of steel, a ship the length of 3 football fields emerges from the morning haze, gliding silently beneath a bridge that lifts into the sky to let it pass. And right beside you, close enough to feel the wake, is a museum that tells the story of every vessel that has ever made this journey. Welcome to Minnesota Explorer, a podcast dedicated to bringing you a new adventure somewhere in Minnesota with every episode. Each week we'll travel to a different destination, from scenic state parks and beautiful lakes to fascinating cities, historic landmarks, and hidden gems tucked away across this incredible state. If you're gearing up for your own trip, head over to northstartravelers.com, where you'll find gear recommendations to help you travel smarter, plus a full list of our other podcast shows covering destinations around the world. If you love discovering new places and planning your next adventure, follow the podcast so you never miss an episode. And if you're enjoying the show, leaving a positive review goes a long way in helping others find it. Now let's explore Minnesota. The Lake Superior Maritime Visitor Center sits at the foot of Duluth's aerial lift bridge in Canal Park, and the story of why it exists here and why a canal was cut through this narrow strip of land in the first place is one of the most dramatic episodes in Minnesota history. Duluth and Superior, Wisconsin were fierce rivals in the 1860s. Both cities wanted to be the dominant port at the western tip of Lake Superior, the gateway to the iron ranges, the grain fields, and the timber stands of the upper Midwest. The natural harbor entrance favored Superior. So Duluth did what Duluth does, it improvised. In the fall of 1870, the city and the Lake Superior and Mississippi Railroad quietly began digging their own canal through Minnesota Point, the narrow sandbar that separated the bay from the open lake. Superior's politicians were furious. They went to court and eventually obtained an injunction on July 13, 1871, ordering Duluth to stop construction. But by that point, it was 2 months too late. The canal was already open. Legend has it that a local brewer named Sidney Luce, who later became Duluth's mayor, personally drove a shovel into the final stretch of gravel on April 30th, 1871, releasing the first rush of water from the bay into the lake. The court order arrived to find a city that had already won. Once the canal was open, Duluth's rise was remarkable. First came grain, shipped out from the Great Prairies to the west, then lumber, coal, and by the 1880s, iron ore from the Vermilion and Mesabi ranges transformed the port into one of the most important shipping hubs on the continent. Today, the port of Duluth Superior is the largest inland port in North America, sitting 2,342 miles from the Atlantic Ocean and handling tens of millions of tons of cargo every year. The Lake Superior Maritime Visitor Center opened in September 1973, operated by the United States Army Corps of Engineers and supported by the Lake Superior Marine Museum Association. From the beginning, its purpose was to preserve the maritime heritage of the region and make it accessible to everyone. The museum and its grounds are federally owned, which means admission is always free. The building was positioned deliberately, right at the edge of the canal, within 200 feet of the shipping lanes, so that visitors could watch the vessels they were reading about literally passing by outside the window. When you step inside, the first thing that may strike you is how intimate the space is. This is not a sprawling complex. It is a carefully curated collection that manages to pack an enormous amount of history into a relatively compact footprint, and it rewards visitors who slow down and pay attention to the details. The centerpiece of the main floor is a 2-story steam engine, a towering piece of machinery that gives you an immediate sense of the raw industrial power that drove the freighters of the late 19th and early 20th centuries. Standing next to it, you start to understand what it meant to keep one of these ships running. The noise, the heat, the sheer mechanical complexity of it all. Nearby, you'll find more than 50 scale models of Great Lakes vessels spanning the full history of commercial shipping on the lakes. The collection ranges from the earliest sailing schooners that carried grain and lumber to the massive 1,000-foot bulk carriers that haul taconite pellets today. Each model is built to scale and labeled with the ship's history, and together they tell the story of how cargo moved across the lakes as American industry grew and changed. Take your time with the replica cabins. The museum has recreated 3 historically accurate living spaces from different eras of Great Lakes shipping: the cramped quarters of an early cargo vessel, a somewhat more comfortable mid-20th century cabin, and a pilot house where you can sit at the controls and look out across the canal. These are not generic reproductions. They are built from research and documentation, and they give you a visceral sense of what life was like for the men who spent weeks or months at a time aboard these ships, far from their families, navigating some of the most unpredictable water in the world. One of the most powerful stops in the museum is the Edmund Fitzgerald exhibit. On November 10th, 1975, the Fitzgerald, at the time the largest ship on the Great Lakes, sank in a violent storm on Lake Superior with all 29 crew members lost. The ship had passed through this very canal on its final voyage. The exhibit does not simply recount the facts of the sinking. It brings you into the mystery, the grief, and the ongoing questions that surround one of the most famous maritime disasters in American history. There are photographs, artifacts, and personal accounts that make the loss feel immediate and human. Gordon Lightfoot's famous ballad gave the Fitzgerald a kind of immortality. But standing in this exhibit, you are reminded that these were real people on a real ship, and that the lake that looks so beautiful from shore can turn lethal in a matter of hours. Live ship arrival and departure times are displayed on monitors throughout the museum, and this is one of those small details that transforms the visit. When you are looking at a model of a bulk carrier, and you glance up to see that a real vessel is inbound and expected within the hour, the history suddenly becomes the present. Step outside onto the grounds and you can watch that same ship, often stretching close to 1,000 feet in length, pass within 200 feet of where you're standing, sliding under the aerial lift bridge as the bridge deck rises smoothly into the air above it. The bridge itself has been doing this since 1905, when it was first built as an aerial transfer bridge, a gondola suspended from the span that ferried passengers across the canal. It was converted to the vertical lift design in 1929 and 1930, and it has been lifting for ships ever since, roughly 25 times a day during the shipping season. Outside on the museum lawn, you can walk up to the tugboat USA CE Bayfield, displayed on the grounds and offering a close-up look at the kind of working vessel that assists freighters as they navigate the harbor. It is easy to walk past without stopping, but it is worth a few minutes of your time. Tugs like this one are the unsung workhorses of the port. The museum also has a gift shop with an excellent selection of books and maritime-themed merchandise, and knowledgeable volunteers are often on hand to answer questions and point out things you might otherwise overlook. If you are visiting with children, the interactive displays hold up well. There is enough to touch and explore to keep younger visitors engaged. Hours during the main shipping season, which runs roughly from May through October, are 10 in the morning until 9 in the evening daily. Hours are reduced in the off-season, so it is worth a quick check before you go. This is a place that rewards patience. If you have a ship arrival on the monitor, linger. If the bridge is about to lift, wait for it. The experience of watching a 1,000-foot freighter emerge from the canal and move out into the open waters of Lake Superior, engines thrumming, horn sounding. It is one of those moments that stays with you long after you have driven home. When you are ready to wrap up, take a few minutes to walk the nearby lake walk. It runs along the shoreline and gives you the kind of perspective on the harbor that is hard to get from inside the museum. Wide sky, open water, and the sense of just how big this lake really is. The Lake Superior Maritime Visitor Center is the kind of place that does more than inform. It connects you to the industrial and human history of a region in a way that feels personal and immediate. The fact that it is free, that it sits right at the edge of one of the busiest shipping canals in the interior of the continent, and that a 1,000-foot freighter might slide past while you are reading about the Edmund Fitzgerald, all of that makes it genuinely unlike anything else in Minnesota. While you are in the area, there's a lot worth exploring. The Great Lakes Aquarium, just a short walk away in Canal Park, offers an interactive look at the fish and aquatic habitats of the Great Lakes system. It pairs naturally with a visit to the Maritime Center. The SS William A. Irvin Ore Boat Museum is also nearby, a retired 1938 Great Lakes freighter that you can tour from stem to stern, getting an up-close look at how these ships were actually built and lived aboard. The Lake Superior Railroad Museum, located in downtown Duluth's historic depot, tells the parallel story of how the railroads connected the iron ranges to the port, and it is well worth the trip. For a meal, Grandma's Saloon and Grill has been a Canal Park institution since 1976. Known for its casual atmosphere, lakeview deck, and reliably good food. Canal Park Brewing Company is a great option if you want a craft beer with your meal. They have a large outdoor patio with a fire pit and a solid pub menu that draws both locals and visitors. If you are making an overnight stay of it, Canal Park has several hotels that put you within walking distance of the waterfront, And there are additional options throughout Duluth to fit a range of budgets. That brings us to the end of today's episode. Before you go, a few quick things. Subscribe so you never miss a destination, leave us a positive review to help others find the show, and share this episode with someone who loves exploring Minnesota. And if you're hungry for more adventures beyond Minnesota, visit northstartravelers.com to explore our other podcast shows and browse gear recommendations for wherever your next journey takes you. Your support means the world and keeps these adventures coming. Thanks for joining us, and happy trails.